Coming up next on The Jeff Crilley Show, she's an expert in the law of attraction and energy medicine. We'll explain next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is The Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, I think I speak for millions of Americans who wonder about COVID and all the advice we were getting from the federal government and all the pills we were being made to take during COVID. It caused a lot of people to kind of wake up and question Western medicine. Somebody who also questions that and believes there's a higher calling, if you will, is my next guest, Dr. Robin Perry Braun. She is the president of Integrated Life Strategies. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. And I think you'll agree with me. Didn't COVID wake a lot of people up?
It really did. I was posting as soon as it came out about health things, preventative things. You know, fear is a powerful energy that lowers your vibration. It actually makes you more susceptible to getting ill. And so, those of us in our field, we were just really trying to encourage people not to believe the fear narrative that they were pushing. To help prevent, what was coming next.
Sure. Well, let's talk about energy medicine, because it's a term that I think people have heard of, but they don't know what it means.
So energy medicine is based on the principle that we are made up of atoms, and all atoms have frequency. So essentially, every organ, every part of your body has a measurable vibration or frequency. And the idea of harmony or wellness would be that we are in alignment with the frequency that we were designed with. Our brains are actually wired for peace and joy. Peace and joy actually have a measurable frequency.
Sure.
And so everything in our life is our body is trying to get back into what we call homeostasis or a harmony. And so dis-ease is actually produced by disharmony. And so the idea of energy medicine is using things like light, sound. There's many devices that have been on the market that have been on the market for decades. They're just not heavily promoted in the U.S. that help the body restore itself back to its natural design. And so even with things like nutrition, essential oils, homeopathics, all of those things, there is a frequency in every vitamin and every food. And the goal is to push out the negative or bad frequencies and restore the frequencies that the body is supposed to vibrate at and bring it back into harmony.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people watching this show can totally identify with what you're saying. We found a great video. We're going to roll a clip of it right now.
My name is Dr. Robin Perry Braun. I have created my own modality, which is an integrated modality from other types of modalities. The name of it is the Integrated Bioenergetic Restoration Therapy. I have a master's in psychology before I went to Quantum University to get my doctorate as an integrative medicine practitioner. And I have a background in psychology, addiction counseling, nutrition, as well as ordained minister, prayer ministry, so Christian, and then also doing the spiritual component. So around 2013, I was introduced to the emotion code and felt really called. That's what I was supposed to do. I was just finishing my master's. And so I integrated that into this idea of using muscle response testing, which I was already a fan of. And because we are energetic beings and we're made up of energy and atoms, our subconscious is a quantum supercomputer. And so it retains everything. Your subconscious mind knows everything you've ever eaten, drunk, said, heard, seen, and it also has a record of your DNA and your ancestry. So once I understood that, and I understood that muscle response testing can test the subconscious for any yes and no question, like a lie detector test, I thought, well, we can find the root cause of anything. And so over several years, I put together a toolbox that included detoxing, nutrition, lifestyle, structural issues, emotions and belief, all of my spiritual training, and then nutrition. And so I had begun doing that, had this practice. And so around 2017, I really felt God called me to go back and get my PhD, my doctorate.
And I have to imagine that you've come across clients who have tried everything that Western medicine has to offer, and they're still sick, they're still tired. Tell me one of your favorite client stories.
So I have a couple, but I have lots. But one of the ones I like to use as a teaching point is a client. She was a woman in her 60s, and she had a lot of trauma, especially in her adult life. She had a very interesting life. She was a public speaker. She did a lot of interesting things, but so we just worked on releasing trauma. We didn't work on nutrition. We didn't work on detoxing, none of that. So if you think of emotion, trapped emotions, negative emotions, trauma, beliefs as weighted balls of energy that are trapped in our body because we weren't able to process or release them. So we just started working on releasing that trauma. And I don't remember how many sessions into our time when she came in with this really dark, ugly purple rash on her face, on her chest. And so she said, can you tell me what this is so we can figure out how to treat it? So I pulled out my toolbox and I was able to muscle test that it was lead. Our skin is our largest organ and it's our detoxing organ. We absorb and detox through our skin. So her body was detoxing lead, and that she had, and I tested the year 2000. And she said, in the year 2000, someone actually tried to poison me. And she goes, I almost died. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And they, were chelating the lead out of her body, but of course they couldn't get it all out. So they literally couldn't get all the lead out. And so it was storing in her tissues. And so all we had done is free up energy in her body for her body to do what it was naturally designed to do, which is detox. So if we could keep up, we live in this highly toxic world. The problem is not that our body's not designed to detox. The problem is that our stress levels, our inability to stay healthy and process things, more toxins come in than our body can release. And so they have to be stored in places. And we end up getting sick.
Wow. We're going to pull up her website. And as we scroll down the website, let's talk about the kinds of clients that you like to help. And I'll have a footnote here. You have written more books than I've read in my lifetime. so we'll get to that in a minute. But the types of clients you like to work with?
So I really like all types. My background quickly was I was the spouse of a sex addict. One of my books is for the wives of sex addicts. So while I do like to help that, I actually really like men. So I don't want to just think every man's a sex addict, but it is a big issue in our world, in our country. I also work with survivors of trafficking, satanic ritual abuse, and mind control projects. So a lot of heavy trauma. That's been a more recent thing I've really focused on the last 2 years, but seen really good results with that. A lot of chronic illness, and I have clients who've spent those $150,000 on doctors, and a lot of the reason they didn't get well is they just had so much trauma, and they were just trying to do straight nutritional or some medical release, mold sickness, all that, but they weren't doing any other types of work.
Yes.
When we look at kind of the body, soul, spirit as one, we have to look at this idea that I like to use the analogy of a hot air balloon, right? And so the hot air balloon is supposed to soar in the sky, but it has sandbags that weigh it down, and it has hot air that makes it go up. So quantifiably, if we can cut off sandbags and add in hot air, so take out the bad, add in the good, then we can kind of live the way we were designed. And we were designed to thrive. It's the way we're made.
Yes. Nice segue to your book, Thrive. You wrote it a few years ago and republished it, is that right?
Yeah, it was my original book was A Believer's Guide to the Law of Attraction. I wrote in 2013. In 2019, a publisher approached me and said, if you'll add more content, I'll publish the book for you. And so I rewrote it. I took the original book and I just added stories in. I added a little more personal, more about myself and more personal stories and newer info that I had learned.
Yes, and you mentioned to me before the show your faith is very important to you, and so
Right.
Living Like a Son. Tell us about this book.
So for my whole journey of walking with God, one of the biggest problems in the church, in the Christian realm, is there's a lot of bad theology that presents God as punishing, judgmental, mean, have to be perfect. And what I've seen over the years with my clients is that, whatever we subconsciously believe about our Father is going to be translated to God. And then there's this constant contradiction that, well, one scripture says God is love, but all these other scriptures say wrathful, punishing, all this kind of stuff. And it's what we call a double bind. And so a double bind is a lose-lose situation, right? I want to love God, but he's going to punish me if I'm not perfect. So we create this performance-driven Christianity and world, and it really is one of the root causes of illness is performance-based identity, and our world promotes it. So I really I don't think God needs me to defend him, but I really wanted, with all my deep dives and all my journey with a loving God, I really wanted people to understand that there's just a lot of misconceptions, bad teaching, contradictory teaching. And if you do deep dives into the original scriptures, he is who Jesus says he is, which is love. He's a loving Father. And that makes a huge difference in a person's health. Ultimately, I'm for their health and their wholeness. And it's hard to be in peace when you're always striving, right? It's hard to rest when you're never good enough. It's hard to love yourself when you say God loves me unconditionally, but I'm always trying to earn his love.
Yes.
So I really wanted to try to, what I felt like was get the truth about who he really is out there, because it aligns with holistic health and wellness on a large scale.
Sure. It's always occurred to me that if you're born a healthy boy or girl, that's God's blueprint, and then we eat the wrong thing. We're in a smoke-filled environment. We have trauma, and so the blueprint gets altered. And then sometimes we start medicating to feel better. Absolutely. And God's blueprint was brilliant.
It was, and there's science too to show we actually can inherit traumas from our ancestors. I had a client inherit a fear of flying from her father. Found out later that her father, all of his friends had died in plane crashes, and she was terrified to get on a plane. And so that's a lot of what I do too. I actually find things in the generational line that have affected the person in their DNA and who they are. And so we work on clearing those things too. So.
Okay, Dr. Braun, we're almost out of time. So I want you to look into the camera on the left. That's your viewer, and talk to the person who feels like they're called to reach out to you.
Okay, so I have two people. I'm really passionate about training practitioners. You don't have to have any experience. The people who come for my training just want to either work on themselves to get their own healing, be a part of a community of alternative practitioners, or work on their friends and family, or people who truly feel called to be practitioners and help the world. Most people in alternative medicine were sick, and they got well using some kind of alternative practice, and so they feel a calling to want to be able to help other people. My private practice is thriving. I don't advertise. As a matter of fact, I refer a lot of people who come to me now out to some of my other practitioners. But anything mental, emotion, or spiritual, our world is very dysfunctional. Normal is not necessarily a good thing. And so we're trying to set a new paradigm of what thriving looks like. My book gives a lot of good tips on just daily practices to be able to raise your own vibration, bring that heart air balloon higher, but also to do deeper dives into energy medicine, energy practices, and collaborating or synergistic ways to get well and stay well. And COVID did a number on our world. It's not done. It's not over. And so knowing how to stay well preventatively is something people in my field are very invested in. We put a lot of research into how do we stay well so the next bioweapon that gets released, we can, be prepared for it.
Outstanding. You've been an amazing guest. We're going to end with both of your websites. We'll start with integrativelifestrategies.com and then drrobinbraun.com. The great Dr. Robin Perry Braun. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks.
All right, that's it for now. We'll see you next time.